honorable ladies and gentlemen of the media, I welcome you to our post-cabinet press briefing for this week. We had cabinet yesterday, the 27th of January 2015, and coming out of that cabinet meeting, the head of the Presidential Secretariat and Secretary to the Cabinet, Dr. Roger Luncheon, will bring you highlights on a number of matters Cabinet wishes to bring to the public's attention through you, the media, after which we will entertain questions on Dr. Luncheon's opening presentation, and today we will try to accommodate other questions outside of his opening presentation. I'll hand you over to Dr. Luncheon.
Thank you, Kwame, and good morning again, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Cabinet met on the 27th, Tuesday of January, yesterday. Arising from that cabinet meeting, here are the matters I would want to bring to yours and the public's attention. One, fuel prices, more on the impact of the price changes in fuel prices at the pump. Then the crime statistics. Number three, universal periodic review of Guyana. Allow me to start with fuel prices. Further on the impact of the changes in the retail prices for fuel that's at the pump. The matter continued to occupy Cabinet's attention, and indeed the focus was in leveraging the changes in the fuel prices at guy oil stations to those other sectors that are not regulated and or in the private sector. And Cabinet was provided with an up-to-date account of the, how should I say, the flow through of the lowered acquisition costs on prices that was becoming applicable in those other retail sectors other than guy oil. Coking gases were concerned. Cabinet was informed that since October of 2014, the price, retail price of cooking gas had been through a series of what been described as modest reductions. The prices are today 13% less. The prices are today 13% less. Anecdotally, I was reminded at bedtime that there was a time late last year when a 20-pound cylinder retailed for as much as $4,000. And for you who are still involved in purchasing, I think it is closer to 3.5 today, January 2015. Public transport. The impact and the expected flow through has not been to Cabinet's desire nor its expectations. In quite a few areas, operators and owners of public transport, they have indeed reduced fares in response to the reduction in fuel prices. However, in other areas, other categories of operators and owners have adamantly refused to countenance any change in their fare structure. It would seem that such sentiments betray this, I suppose, is a compulsion. When fuel prices go up, there is a demand for increases in fares. But when fuel prices fall, it's like pulling teeth to get fare increases to be rolled back. It does lead one to wonder, were the current world prices tumbling of fuel and fuel products to reverse itself and prices of acquisition prices start moving in the opposite direction, increases might very well be countenanced, and we would again have segments in the retail sector, transportation particularly, having the claims increased fuel prices legitimizing demands for increased fares. Essentially a one-way sort of engagement between fares and fuel prices. Where aviation fuel and fuel products are concerned, this is also unregulated, and our records so far have shown very little change, and only in the newly opened Guyol facility at CJIA has there been a dip in the price of aviation fuel. The electricity sector, I think I was asked about this last week, and the GPL, I'm now advised, is favorably disposed to, according with the President's request for consideration of electricity charge decrease, and the company has practically undertaken to have the electricity charges for consumers across the board, to have those electricity charges adjusted. I think that means adjusted downwards. We are essentially, as Cabinet surmised, dealing with the benefits of a regulated sector and government's intervention, a historical intervention in cushioning the flow through of prices, world prices, on the consumer in Guyana. Those unregulated sectors strengthen the call for them to become regulated. The government continues to deliberate on an option of extending the state into competing with such interests. There is no uniformity on that position currently. Crime statistics. November the 15th to January the 15th, that is November 2014, and January the 15th, 2015. That period is specially treated by law enforcement in Guyana. Immediately prior, during, and immediately after the festive Christmas season, law enforcement and its presence is ramped up in our communities, towns, and in the divisions, the police divisions in Guyana. The results, insofar as crime statistics are concerned, the results are interesting, but of course, not unexpected. In summary, more police presence, more crime prevention. If there was ever a maxim to be drawn during this period, November to January, and what made it special, the increased police presence, is that maxim: more police presence, more crime prevention. November 2014 to January 2015, fully supported that maxim. And indeed, for all practical purposes, more police presence compared to the other months in 2014 and compared to the similar period 2013 to 2014 clearly demonstrated the benefits of more police, heightened police presence on crime, on reported crime statistics. Serious crime, the statistics, and important categories of criminal activity all reflected, all fell compared to the earlier months of the year and compared to the same period, 2013, 2014. The impact is probably provided some satisfaction for the administration, because as you may recall, excuse me, in the latter part of 2015, important decisions were made that reflected on heightened police presence, recruitment, the establishment. We, as the level of the cabinet and at the defense board, the administration, the government made decisions Importantly, one, to increase the establishment of the Guyana Police Force. At the Defense Board, to increase the establishment of the Special Constabulary, and also at Cabinet to increase the establishment of the Customs Anti-Narcotic Unit. On that basis, that more police presence leads to greater crime prevention and more crime fighting, and those latter changes, those latter decisions of the administration in 2014, the future does augur well for law enforcement and directly for Guyanese, the citizens in their communities. The Universal Periodic Review of Guyana. My mother says, man proposes and God disposes. Our delegation, Presidential Advisor on Governance, Ms. Gail Teixeira, Legal Advisor, Ms. Damon Young from the Ministry of Legal Affairs, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mrs. Carlin Rodriguez-Burkett, were the appointed unofficial delegates to this Geneva event. The weather would have it different. And so North America, and particularly the eastern coast, the eastern seabed, and threats, and more than threats, onset of blizzards, stranded the presidential advisor and the legal advisor. Minister Carlin Rodriguez-Burkett was the sole delegate from Guyana at the UPR review of Guyana. This review, as you would recall, sees an examination of Guyana's report, a report that addresses the set of rights, treaties, and conventions to which Guyana has subscribed. A report that not only addresses Guyana's compliance, but also addresses recommendations that have arisen or had arisen in the previous UPR events, 2010, where Guyana presented its previous report. The routine is fairly simple. The working group that constitutes itself to examine the Guyana's report with the assistance of the Guyanese delegation would, at the end of the activity, which is held during a session of any one day, in which case for Guyana it is today, but that engagement allows members of the international community, nation states, participating parties, NGOs, international and local, to indeed review, join in the review of the government's reports, which spans a period from our last review to, I believe, October or November of 2014. That outcome is actually broadcast live. That outcome is actually broadcast live. Transcripts, however, are available and formally are available within 24 to 48 hours. We are told by Friday a formal transcript would be provided. Once that report, the review, is acceptable to all, it then is submitted to the UN Human Rights Council, where in June this year, Guyana and the Council would meet, confirm mutual satisfaction, and Guyana's official report to the UPR would be then made available publicly. As I started out, I said, man proposes and God disposes. And Minister Rodriguez Burkett unexpectedly assumed total responsibility for defending the Guyana's submission, UPR submission, on the 2015 in Geneva. Those are the matters I wanted to bring to your attention, ladies and gentlemen. Time is on our side today, and I am advising that I'm prepared to respond in any sequence whatsoever questions on either my opening statement, clarifications thereof, as well as those on any topical matter of interest to members of the media. Thank you.
We now open up for questions. Please identify yourself and media house before you proceed. We have Vanessa.
Dr. Luncheon, good morning. Can you clarify
Your name and media house, please.
Vanessa from the Ghana Chronicle. Can you clarify what percentage reduction we're looking at? Or what percentage reduction GPL is considering?
This is...
The GPL reduction.
Oh, I haven't a clue what that reduction would actually be like in the electricity charges levied on customers. I don't have any idea. I do know that they are favorably inclined, though.
Also, CELAC meets today. Do we have any representation there?
The CELAC meeting, the Prime Minister would have left the energy meeting in Washington, and he would be representing Guyana at the CELAC meeting.
Okay. Then I saw Paul's hand as a second person.
Makaram Gina from Makaram Gina. Dr. Luncheon, is Cabinet aware or do they have any view on the position taken by the PSC to appoint, to approve the promotions of the two officers from liable for torture?
The
Police Service Commission.
Oh, I thought he said PAC.
No, the PSC.
Yeah.
Yes.
The understanding that has been, I would say, provided to Cabinet essentially is clarified the decision the Police Service Commission having satisfied itself that the matter had been concluded and whatever recourse to the law, to departmental charges, had completed its course, and indeed the individuals, the two policemen, were no longer subjected or subject to disciplinary or legal challenges for the torture charges that were laid against them. It is understood that the Commission acted from that perspective in going ahead and addressing the otherwise, I would put the otherwise superb, adequate functioning of these police officers. This is what Cabinet was led to believe. Your question, though, specifically asks about the views of Cabinet, and it would be fair to say that some disquiet in the absence of an explanation. I think there was a satisfaction with the Commission's contention that the law had taken its course, the disciplinary courses, the disciplinary actions had been implemented, and there was no need to deny, as a sort of additional disciplinary measure, there was no need to deny these policemen promotion.
Okay. Yes, Adam.
Adam Harris, Prime News, sir. The periodic review, 2010, 2014. During that period, there were a number of accusations, printed and otherwise from sources, not excluding the United States, about certain violations, alleged violations committed by Guyana. Were these addressed by Minister Rodriguez in Switzerland? And since everybody getting to, might as well ask the second one.
You're lucky.
This year, lucky. There was a policeman also who was promoted, and this is a follow-up to Paul's question, promoted to inspector, and then had that promotion rescinded on the allegation that he had pending matters when it turned out that all his matters have been dismissed. Is there any redress, or could there be any redress for that officer, or that rank?
Your second question first. I would, of course, resist the temptation to anoint myself as the Police Service Commission under whichever statutory or constitutional body equipped to address those concerns. But as in the other cases that Paul raised, having exhausted legal, departmental, and all of the charges, the officers were deemed to be eligible. So as far as I could see, using the same logic, if a persuasive argument based on facts had been made that their promotion was inconsistent with that fact, that there were outstanding charges against that policeman, then I think you would want to agree with me. The Commission acted appropriately. Why the Commission would have acted only to discover that it had acted incorrectly is another matter. And it does suggest that again, as I have been saying ad nauseum, look before you leap. That indeed the issue ought to have been so thoroughly investigated that there would have been one intervention where that aspect was concerned, the presence or the absence of an ongoing disciplinary matter that would have precluded any challenge to the decision made by that appropriate authority. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened. And now we caught, is there or isn't there an outstanding legal disciplinary matter? And believe you me, you would be surprised disciplinary could assume so many dimensions, and even outstanding could. Sounds straightforward to you and I, but under these trying circumstances, I would not be surprised that this becomes an issue.
Yes, the human rights thing.
The UPR, yes. I do know for a fact, having gotten some brief reports on the proceedings that I said were being broadcast live on webcast, that issues by the countries, reviewing Guyana's report, those were some that were raised. The minister, I understood, presented the Guyana government, the administration position on those matters. One, essentially, when established as having occurred, the law takes its course. When established as not having occurred, the policemen, or for that matter, the security forces, the officers, would essentially go scot-free.
Okay, Neil, you had your answer.
Sir, could you go back to the favorable disposition of GPL to lower electricity charges? Do you have a slight clue of when they might do that?
Well, I like the word you use, a slight clue. And perhaps I would reciprocate with some similar level of vagueness by saying soon.
And sir, if I could have a follow-up, sir, whatever happened to the proposal by Cabinet to support the establishment of transportation co-ops in the new housing areas to move along main corridors?
It didn't die, nor did it actually come to fruition. I suspect that there are those who may be contemplating occasions such as these, where operators and owners seem defiant of government's will, and indeed consumers' will, to leverage, produce big buses at government's expense to increase competition, or indeed to follow up on the creation of these transportation co-ops, all with the interest, maybe not primary, but obviously an interest of having a salutary impact on the transportation woes, including price, of consumers in Guyana. I said the regulation of the sector seems much more promising than actually the government being involved in the sector competing with private interests.
You right up here. Yeah.
Yes, hi, I'm Erica Williams with Times. I'm just trying to find out what's the current stage of the fiber optic cable project.
What is that?
Fiber optic cable project.
The fiber optic cable project, I would remind you again, has essentially three components, and the two components are related. That is the establishment of the data center along with the backbone for backhauling from Molson Creek to Anna Regina. Those two subcomponents are matched with the third subcomponent, the cable from Lethem to Georgetown. Those are the three components. So when you are asking, is it all three, one, two, what specifically, which component are you desirous?
You had said that you were doing remedial works on the cable that was damaged, and then
Okay, the media was advised, I think, sometime before the end of 2014 about the status of the Lethem to Georgetown cable. And we quoted the engineers who, studying the existing layout, recognized that there was need for a significant amount of defects to be corrected along that distance from Lethem to Georgetown. The proposals that were placed before the government included one, the government itself moving to do the corrections, or two, the government in conjunction with external parties having the cable corrected. The number one option that is on the table right now is to work with external bodies. And I did mention this consortium that would or has undertaken for certain considerations that I'm not at liberty to disclose because it's being considered by the authorities, but they will completely rehabilitate, correct the defects, and restore the cable to serviceability. And under those conditions, they would be provided with a consideration appropriate to the expenditure that they would be incurring in correcting the defects.
Yes, you had a question?
Dr. Luncheon, Anchovies, 19 News. Sir, would you give me any information pertaining to when the President will give the commencement order to dissolve Parliament?
Proclamation, sir.
Proclamation.
I think if you were to do what many have done, and that is trying to accord themselves in their mathematical computations with constitutional provisions 3 months counting backwards from the 11th of May does provide the drop dead date. Some feel it is the latest date, so that 3 months from that date, polling can take place, a constitutional requirement. I think this is not a contention that generates any significant amount of controversy. Lesser views exist that it is really no less than 3 months. In other words, you can indeed dissolve anytime no later than 3 months before the time of polling. That isn't exactly what the Constitution says. It might, of course, be what is meant, but it ain't exactly what the Constitution says. So I have accorded that, and some of my colleagues agree with me, a lesser option. So you're looking at disillusion 3 months exactly from the 11th of May. I'm told, and you must pardon my mathematical computations, not what it used to be, that puts you sometime between the 8th or the 9th of February.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Thank you very much.